Oh, hello beautiful people, welcome back to another video. So I was just checking through this drug guide because it really reminds me of my time during clinicals. So my favorite part of creating content is usually storytelling, because I love telling stories, especially about my nursing journey. And like, I've been through a lot in nursing school, and I know I'm yet to go through a lot being a nurse. So I just want to share each and every moment with you guys. Like, I wish I can remember all those moments and I can go to tell you the stories. So today I just wanted to talk about my experience during assessments, because when you go for clinicals, when you finish a certain attachment, you usually do assessments. Like, let's say you went for attachment for nursing care of a patient, you have to do an assessment. When you go for mother in labor, you have to do an assessment. When you go for pregnant woman, you have to do an assessment. So assessments are usually part of clinicals, and you cannot do anything about that. So the other assessments were better off apart from the first one, because most of the time, like, the first time you do something, like, it surely turns out badly. Like, my first assessment was my worst assessment, and I thought maybe I should tell you the story about what happened and how it turned out and how everything went by and how I even cried. To see more of these videos, make sure that you subscribe so that whenever I post another video, you don't miss it out. So on the next video, I'll be talking about tips on how to be able to pass clinical assessment. So I thought that before creating that content on how to pass the assessment, I should first start by telling you my story about my first assessment, because I know maybe some of you guys are already doing already started clinicals, or maybe you are yet to start, and maybe you are already like anxious to know something about what goes through clinicals. So I'll talk about that in my next video, but today let's just dive into the story time. So my first assessment, like, we usually start with nursing care of a patient, like NCP. So for the nursing care of a patient, I remember I went to the pediatric ward. There's where I was doing my assessment. So for nursing care of a patient, most of the time we usually go to the general wards, that is a medical ward or a surgical ward or a pediatric ward, like, whereby you have to take care of a patient. So some of us went to the medical ward, some of us surgical, but for me, I went to the pediatric ward. So I remember the person who was supposed to assess us was the deputy academics, and she was really strict. Like, that woman was so strict, like, I don't know. Like, I remember we had to, because when you do assessments, you have to like choose patients. Like, you choose, I think most of the lecturers usually say 3 patients. I hear some lecturers even say 5 patients. So for us, we were to choose 3 patients. So she told us that tomorrow I'll be assessing you guys, so make sure you get ready for other assessments. So the previous night we spent like almost until, I don't know, 10 p.m. we were just in the wards, like, trying to write about our patients, to read about the drugs, to just cram the management, to just learn, because you have 3 patients and you don't know which patient she'll choose for you to be able to do a procedure, or for you to be able to explain the medication, or for you to be able to explain the management. So you have to be ready with all the 3 patients that you chose. And then coming the next day, she decided she won't come. So that means if your patient was due discharge, now your patient has to leave, and you cannot beg a patient to stay back in the hospital only because you have an exam. Like, that is so weird. So if your patient is discharged on the next day, you have a bad luck. So 2 of my patients were discharged. So on the next day, I had to choose other 2 patients again. You start writing again. I remember you are writing the history, you're writing medication, you're writing the management, you're writing the nursing care plan. Like, if you've ever written the nursing care plan, you'd know like how tricky writing a nursing care plan, especially when you're in a hurry, is. So you write the nursing care plan. I've written it again the second time. And then I remember you have to go and don't know, like, make photocopies, because you'll be assessed by the lecturer, and then there'll be one nurse from that ward will be like assistant assessor. Yeah. So you go make photocopies again. Then when it came the next day, I think she also didn't come. Until right now, we were almost getting discouraged. Then she came on the other day. So on that day when she came, like, we were just tensed. Like, when do you remember those kind of like teachers, whenever you see them walking, like the way the deputy teachers usually act in high school, that the moment you see them walking in the pavement or even entering a class, everyone freezes and everyone starts freaking out. That was the same thing with that lecturer. The moment she walked in through the pediatric ward, like, I just shivered and I felt like I can't pee on myself. So she walked in and everyone was shivering. I think there was a ward round going on, and for her, she used to be strict. Like, whenever there's a ward round, you can't sit down and just like be writing cardex and other people are like going through ward round and learning. She used to say, you didn't come here to write a cardex, you came here to learn, so go through the ward. So that day we are in the ward round, we have name tags, we are so clean, we are so neat. So she came in ready to start. So she was with the deputy in charge of the pediatric ward. So they were there and they were like, hey, so we're supposed to start. So they started with the first person. So I remember the first person who started, so you know, you're dealing with pediatric patient. This is a kid. So when a kid says you won't touch him, you won't touch him. So remember the first student who started, she started with a kid whom she was supposed to do, I think it was a physical exam, and the kid refused. Do you know what the lecturer said? Talk to that kid, make sure that kid listens to you, and then call me if you're ready. Imagine such, who does that? So imagine, this is not your kid, you're not so used to this kid. So that girl had to sit down, buy bundles, download cartoons, make sure that she tries and make this child like her so that they can start making a conversation, try and play with that child until they bond. I remember she came to us crying, like she was wondering how is it that you're going to connect with a child for like 2 hours or 1 hour. When it got to my turn, so you're called there and you're told, present your patient. So what happens is that you give them the papers, like you had a copy, the original copy that you wrote, you give it to the lecturer, then there's a photocopy that you made, you give it to the deputy in charge. So they take the copies and then they kind of read and they want you to remove those things that you've written there. You have to talk about them while saying them from your head. So you should have already crammed the entire history about that patient, the management and everything that you're doing for the patient. So they'll take that and then they'll be like looking to see if you're saying the correct thing. So you are shivering. At that time you're so scared, you're just like, my patient is Ukimani and he's 2 years old, and you say everything and they're looking at you. Some of them even laugh. They like try and like, I remember that day I'm talking and then they're talking Kikuyu, like the two of them are Kikuyu, they're talking Kikuyu and then they're laughing out loud and you're like, so are you going to listen to me? Like, have I said something wrong? Why are you not even listening? And after I was done talking, she didn't even care. She took my nursing care plan, like tore it apart like this and then threw it and said, there's nothing you've done here, go back and start again. Okay. I'm telling you, there are people out here, I don't know, they will see heaven. Go back and start again. So that means you have to go and start writing again, and you are scared, you're so confused. And then there's this other time that you usually do orals. So for orals, they usually tell you you go and maybe something like medication, maybe you say the patient is using ceftriaxone and maybe painkillers, maybe PCM, yeah. So they'll, like, the moment you sit down, you sit down in a room, so they're seated, the two of them, then you have a seat that is almost opposite them. So they'll start asking what is the side effect, indication, and all those things about a drug. So I think it was, they were asking, what was they asking? They asked me something, it was about bilirubin levels, and I didn't know. And they're like, get out of here, you don't even know, and you've been in the ward, go and look for it. So I went back and Googled. Wrote it down. Then after you've done it, and then the next day when she comes, you have to present the thing that she told you to go and look for. So when I was presenting it, she was like, why did you get this thing? And I was like, I searched for it. You Googled? You mean you Googled? With all these doctors in this hospital, you have the gut to Google? Oh my God. She was so angry at me. She started quarreling, and like, I don't know, like my first experience was so bad. And then I remember one thing that made me so angry during that day of assessment is that, so this is a pediatric patient, so our main focus is on the baby, not the mother. So she was there, and when she was reading, because you are dealing with the baby, you have to also know about something about the mother, because at times, like when the mother is not psychologically fit, like at times it might affect the care of the baby, and it might cause some of the conditions the babies are facing. So she was like, I also want to ask you about the mother. I was like, okay, so what does she do? I was like, she's a teacher. And she was like, in which school? I was like, what do you mean in which school? Like, as long as I know she's a teacher, like the rest of the focus is supposed to be on the baby. She was like, you mean you've been like asking this woman a question, you've never even interacted with her, you've never even bothered to know which school she teaches? You know, you're the kind of nurses who like don't like realize problems, because you cannot realize maybe that school that she's teaching is the school that maybe is giving her problems. And then she was like, okay. And then she asked the woman, she asked me first, is the woman married? I was like, yes. And then, you know, at times they usually tell us before assessments, make sure that you talk with your patient, or maybe if it's a baby, you talk with the mother and make sure that you tell her, she takes like if she doesn't know how to answer anything, it's better she just keeps quiet, because she might mess your entire assessment. Because if you don't tell her such kind of a thing, she may just answer na end up kukuuza, unaona. So like I forgot to tell her, like when you are asked something and it's something that you never told me, like try and help me. I just don't like anika me so bad. So in her, like I took the married stuff from the file, like the mother is married, so I knew the mother is married. So after I said yeah, she's married, the lecturer was like, she asked the lady in Kikuyu, and then after that she was like, so you didn't even know this woman was divorced 2 years ago? I'm like, when you were taking the like, oh God, when you were taking the notes, she said she was married. So the fact that she's divorced, that is something I had no idea about. And you have 3 patients to take care of. Like, how can you know 3 children and 3 mothers at the same time? Gosh, that made a whole difference. Like, she started talking a lot about that. And don't you know that the divorce can be the reason as to why the mother cannot take care of the baby? That is why the baby has been like getting infections frequently. Like, it was so traumatizing. Like, it just confuses you completely. Like, I think this is just a bonus advice, that if you have days before assessments, like make sure you talk to your patient, tell them like if they don't know something, at least they should let you answer it, or they should try and say it in a way that it doesn't mess you around, because some patients can really mess you around. I remember there was a time that a friend of mine, I think she forgot the name of the patient, and she said the wrong patient, the wrong name, and the patient was like, hiyo si jina yangu, mimi si tu hivi, hiyo si jina yangu, and everyone laughed. So like you should just try and talk to them and make them like, usiniaibisha, hata nikisema kitu si yako, hata nikisema condition si yako, like I'm doing this like for assessment, just help me out, like don't make me fail only because of like cramming things. And then like just be prepared, like look nice. You know, at times the way you look can just make the lecturer change everything about you. Like they'll just come and look at you, you don't look clean, your hair doesn't look nice, your shoes don't look nice, and then they look at you, and then they're like, I'm not assessing you, and they even give a 20% and that's it for you. So just look neat, have a name tag, like just wash your apron, like look good on that day. That is the only day that you're gonna have to look neat. Make sure the ward looks nice. Like it will save you a lot during your your assessment. So remember, that lecturer, apart from being so mean, she used to pinch us. Like she pinches you like here, literally. I remember she pinched me like until part of like ingozi ilitokana. I remember I sat down and just started crying until one of the parents called me and she was like, don't worry, these are things that just happen, you guys are good nurses, let that teacher like not discourage you from being like a nurse. Because she felt like the way that nurse treated us, it's something that can make us even leave nursing school. So you can imagine how bad it is, because she was shouting at you in front of all doctors, all clinical officers, all nurses, all patients. Everyone is listening to how she's shouting. So it was so terrible that if you're someone who wants to give up, you could have given up. But I remember that patient told me, that parent told me, don't give up. That lecturer is just someone who wants to be mean. Like I've seen her, he's just someone who wants to be mean. So don't get angry about that. And I remember when she was giving out the marks, she gave, I don't know, 30, 40, 50. You know, for assessment, most of the time these lecturers usually just give you 80, 90, because yeah, as in, why give someone a 30? Like, why fail someone an assessment, really? So she gave us 30s, 40s, 50s, like where she is right now. May God help her and may God help the students she is with. But she messed me up, because during the next assessment, like, I've always just been scared during each and every other assessment, because I actually have, like, I feel like I'm expecting the same thing from other lecturers, but then you find that other lecturers are not so mean. So yeah, that was my experience for assessment, like my first clinical assessment. Maybe I'll be talking about the other ones which were a little bit better. Maybe this one was scary, but then on the next video I'll be talking about tips on how to do in your clinical assessments, because I know you really need that. So see you on my next video. Bye bye. There's this one incident I don't want to forget to tell you guys. Like, I think it was the same lecturer. She came for assessments, and then I think the student did something wrong, and then she started like shouting and lamenting, anaua wagonjwa, anawaua, huyu student anaua wagonjwa. What do you think the patients or the like parents will feel like if you tell, like, or the relatives, like, if they hear nurses anaua mgonjwa? Like, imagine that is your assessment. Damn.